Because most of these folks, it's a service company where they started from literally parking cars and working their way up all those years. And so none of them have gone and got education. The reason I got involved in it was there were some entrepreneurs there. They had been entrepreneurs since their little folks. And so that was their calling and their wish to bring other outside thinkers into the business model. So it is important that we walk out of this program with an understanding of how to research, how to find the answers to the problem. When I review my finance reports at work, okay, I have an understanding of what they are. But if it's got to be some detailed question, who do I call? My CFO. That's his specialty. Okay? My specialty is understanding all these areas, being able to pull all these things together, having a knowledge base, and having the ability to go find out. That's really why the MBA program is so much different than a law program. And it does give you a wider view of the world because you are touching so many different things. And then you will choose which one of those things you want to do, which one of those things you want to take on. It's great to have so many people in here that want to have some sort of entrepreneurial feeling in their future, because you're going to be able to use this class as that springboard. Building this business plan, okay? I'm not expecting you to do, and I will talk about that a little later today, but that's going to help you find things, because it's going to be research. It's going to be discussions. It's going to be talking to others. So that in and of itself, I think, is a huge thing for you to be able to understand, because it will help you give a lot of groundwork for what you want to do. Okay? The case study. Evaluating what went wrong, what went right. What would you do differently? Okay? Another important part of this course. So you use your knowledge base. We grow that knowledge base, and then at the end of this, you have a much different understanding of how to move forward, which you all will. It gives you the ability to meet your dreams. Both of you have dreams, have wishes. You can have an impact on society. You can look around the room every day. I mean, even though Facebook has had a little stumbling here, that's had a huge effect on society. Okay, Microsoft, all these folks. You be your own boss. Sometimes that's not the best thing. You're finding out. Okay, it takes a heck of a commitment to be an entrepreneur. A heck of a commitment, because you're talking about everything in your life, everything around you. You got to give up. Okay, because you have to be committed to this. You have to work it day and night. The pitfalls, the challenges, but there are rewards. Okay? There are rewards. But you go through a period, as you said, 3 years of, oh my gosh, what is this thing that comes up? The last 5 years, I've been saying the same thing. This is not what I anticipated. This is not what I came on board for. This is not what I wanted to do. This was not the business plan that I put together. Okay? But you have to adapt. The partnerships. Right? They're important. They're important. We don't always have to take in everything, but that is another link, and we'll talk about that more when we get into the SBA. So again, I think we have a good knowledge base in this classroom. This is going to be a great learning environment and a sharing environment. And again, for Philip and Quan, this is about you. I'm a facilitator. I'm going to give you as much information as I can. I'm going to share with you, but you are bringing the information to the table by what we do over the next 6 weeks. Okay? And I'm not trying to drown you in work, but I want to make sure you can understand the commitment that goes into something like this and where to find those things. Okay? So I've sort of looked at this from the standpoint of what I believe will work best. Now, from a teaching background, I've been teaching for 25, 30 years. I've taught high school. I've taught vocational education. I've taught Cal State system. And actually actually, the reason I'm here is because of Linda Martinez, who I taught with over at Cal State Northern. I have a teaching credential, and I have a supervision credential. So I love teaching. It's another one of the things I do. So I'm a very unique employee for my company because I come in with a law enforcement background, a business background, and a teaching background. So I've been a very interesting employee for my employer to work with because I was hired to run operations of a service company, but I've also helped out in two other areas, in two other vertical markets, help them develop those markets. So my ability has given them much more breadth. And then through my previous employer, I am now back assisting that previous employer on a part-time basis. And I was gone almost 8 years, and they asked me to come back. So the knowledge base that you learn, you'll be able to use. And so don't ever think that no matter what class you take, and I will tell you, I'll be honest with you, the worst class I took in my MBA program was statistics. I absolutely hated it. Hated it, hated it, hated it. Hated it, right? I suffered so much brain damage in that class. I spent so many hours trying to get that. All right? But you know what? I know it did come in here. It did. Now, you give me business math, not a problem. I'll do that all day long. Basic account. But for some reason, we always have this one class that just chews us up. That'll happen, right? But even then, there's a learning. So struggle with it, but know that it is meaningful to you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will be meaningful. Who would have ever thought, after 15 years of law enforcement, I'd be running business? I did. But 15 years into that, I was like, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being sued. I'm tired of chasing. I'm tired of dealing with the public all the time. So then I went and taught high school. And I opened my business, a second business. And that didn't fit either. On the way in here today, KNX was talking about how many jobs we will now have in our lifetime. Anybody have an idea how many of those are going to be? How many jobs are each and every of us in general going to have nowadays? 11. Okay. So think about this. Just 20 years ago, most people were with companies from day one, pretty much to the end. Okay? That doesn't happen. Okay? We're driven by different things now. There's an article in, did I bring it? Yes. HR Magazine. By the way, I hate to read. Okay? Unless it's things I like. These are things you need to subscribe to. You need to get emailed to you. Anything business related, get it. Okay? Anything you can get on the internet that makes sense to you, get it. Now, do I look at these completely every time? No. Okay? But I do scan. And I always find something meaningful. So, as part of the class, this is part of what I'm going to have you do, is bring articles in that are meaningful. Okay? And what it helps you do is build your database of information. Okay? Keelan said it, research. Okay? We want you to be able to research, find, inquire, evaluate, dissect. Okay? That's what we want you to do in these programs. So, sign up for all sorts of things. There's so much free stuff out there, it's unbelievable. Okay? But anything to do with entrepreneurship, anything to do with resources, management, get those things. Okay? Put them away for use in the future. And we'll talk about a couple of articles just in here this morning. So, for this class, over the next 6 weeks, we're going to be busy. Okay? But I'm not going to drown you. But I want you to have a good grasp of what we're done. So, we will have online assignments. There are reading assignments. There are research assignments. There will be a business plan that you'll need to develop for week 3. There is a case study done for week 6, okay, with a presentation. Both of these will be presentations. Why is that important? What is my tone in this class been so far? We share. Okay, we share. Right? So we will all learn from each other. Always, every time. I'm not the expert. I'm knowledgeable, but I know where to find things. I know where to research. I know who to ask. I know where to look. And that's what we want to make sure you do. Remember all the writing products for APA? Don't forget that, please. Plagiarism, again, at this level, although we will talk about it, even when I was in the Cal State system, I did experience it. So plagiarism is a very important thing to remember. I'm here to support you, and I'll do that in every way I can. I will respond to your emails. I will also be setting up every Wednesday night. We will have a time to go online and share, ask questions. So that'll be available to you. So as far as the syllabus for the class, it has been updated as of this morning, and I will make a couple more tweaks. And quite frankly, as you and everybody else knows that have run businesses, there's no downtime. So between 20 hours of running your business and 3.5 hours of spending with your family, and then another 30 minutes to do what you need to do. So it is busy, but we have to pace ourselves. Okay? So everybody has the book? Does everybody have the book? Okay, we all should have this text. Okay. All right. There is reading every week, basically 3 chapters. And when you're reading, what I want you to pull out of the reading are the important factors of the reading. Okay? I don't expect you to read from cover to cover. What I expect you to do is gather the information, the terminology, the concepts, okay? Because that's what I'm going to have you feedback online in your discussion postings. Okay? My phone number and everything is in on the syllabus. Again, I will get back to you via email. Wednesday nights we'll have the opportunity to come online and ask questions, share information, clarify. Okay? Again, if you send me an email, unless it's something's personal, I send that back to them. Okay? Because if you have that question, I'm sure someone else is probably thinking something like that. So don't be offended when it comes back out as a full broadcast. Again, our learning objectives are to be able to understand business, how we develop it. And one of the most important sites I want you to use is the SBA.gov. Okay, that's we'll be posting some links for you on the website, but that's the one I want you to use most of. It is so much information there, and so many links to other information that you could spend hours there. Okay, SBA.gov. It'll be online. Okay, SBA.gov. Yes, as Small Business Administration. Okay, SBA.gov. Okay, that'll be the first place you go tonight, because that's what you need to do in order to make your week 3 assignment. Okay, is build your business plan. Discussion boards. Every Tuesday, you're going to be required to post a discussion and then respond to one discussion from your class. Okay? And the purpose of that, again, is to share information to develop your knowledge base. Again, I'm not asking you to write a book, but I want it to be meaningful. And there's more information about it in the syllabus. But it's something that's meaningful because it also allows me to see what you're thinking. Okay? It allows me to maybe tweak next week's syllabus a little bit to cover a particular topic or knowledge domain. Okay?
So every Tuesday, because this from the chapter book.
It could be from the chapter readings or from something you research. Okay? So since we're developing our business plans over the next 3 weeks, you may have something that you want to share that you that you found. Some particular resources is fabulous. Okay, it's helped you really understand something or really help you build what you're trying to build. Okay, so again, I'm an open book. What helps you be successful in this class? Be successful in this class. So post one, respond to one. All right, and again, let's be meaningful. Let's be cognizant of each other. Let's make sure we are not derogatory in any manner. Everybody is an individual, and we all think differently. We all have different expectations. So let's make sure our responses are very appropriate. Okay, I don't want to see any mean-spirited responses or, hey, you big dummy. That's not what this is about. Okay, so let's take that for an example. Let's say someone does post something that may not be accurate. Okay, help them understand it. Refer them to something. Hey, I found this at this location, or my understanding of readings was X. Right? So again, help each other. Class participation. Again, this is a conversation. This is not a lecture. This is a conversation. I want input. I want participation. I want dialogue. Okay? And I do that by making things like articles every week and discussion boards, things like that. So we have a continual dialogue. So as I said, the midterm will be the business plan. We'll talk a little bit more about that. The final project will be also a presentation PowerPoint about a case study that you want to evaluate. There's tons of examples in the book. Okay, so many examples on the websites. Find something that relates to what you're interested in. Look at that company. Look at what they did, what they didn't do. How does that work with what we're learning? Okay? How does that relate to what I want to do? Right? So your final project is about a 20-minute presentation to the class about something, a case study of a business that you were interested in. And why did it work? Why didn't it work? Using what you're learning in the text, okay? How does that affect what happened? What happened in that company? Okay? Why were they successful? A wine company. I would take I think it's chapter 2, right here is chapter 2 or 3. Take that, run with it. One line gets you more information. Okay? But there's tons of available information out there, references. The grading criteria is pretty standard, everybody. I don't foresee anybody not being successful in this class as long as you participate. As far as the percentages, how many people have not been on the website to look at the class? Okay, so go in there. It's all there. I weigh a lot more for the postings, the discussions, and the 2 projects. That's where I weigh a lot of my things because that tells me you're involved in the class. Okay? It tells me you're involved in the class and what you're learning. Because just by you building a case study, you're learning. By putting together a business plan, you're learning. And that's what this class is. Let's see here. That's 6 weeks are broken down again on the web. It's pretty consistent every week. You're gonna have reading, you're gonna have discussion, you're gonna have quizzes, you're gonna have an activity. You have to build your 2 different midterm projects, so it's pretty consistent. So I try to keep it very consistent, and depending on how things go, I'm very flexible. Okay, I'm very flexible. If I see we're getting bogged down somewhere, or we're not able to get where I want to be, then we'll adjust accordingly. Okay. Again, the reading is reference. The reading is reference. I don't expect you to read every single thing. I expect you to garner the topics, the information, in order to be able to put your presentation together and to be able to allow us to have conversation and dialogue. Fun. Wednesday night is your time. If you want to come online, if you have questions, or quite frankly, even if you don't have a question, I'd like you to come online to see what the class is about. Okay? It's only an hour. It's just to really, if nobody has anything, I usually will always put something out there. Okay? So I will put something out there just to spur a conversation if necessary. But again, it's another time for us Because look, a week's a long time in between. In between your reading and your discussions, your business plan development, there may be questions. Okay? And again, I want to make sure we're constantly communicating. That's the key. They say 8 to 9, I think. 8 to 9. Tuesdays, you need to make sure you've done your posting by midnight. By midnight, and the quizzes have to be completed by midnight on Friday. It's all in the syllabus. The quizzes is based on the reading focus. If you're getting the concepts out of the reading, you'll be able to take care of the quiz. Again, it's a knowledge-based testing. Let's make sure that we're covering the topics we need to cover and that we're making progress. Your midterm is a presentation, your business plan presentation. Your final is your case study presentation in PowerPoint. Yes. Yes, PowerPoint. And again, you're not doing this for me. You're doing it for each other. So based upon all these things you've just heard here about what everybody in the class interests are and what their aspirations are, use that as part of your presentation. All right. Let's talk a few minutes about the business plan, because you need to start working on that right away. That's going to take you some time. All right. Again, SBA.gov, and it'll be on the website tonight. Just go there. In fact, does this have internet on it? How many have been on this site before? Okay. So if you go here and writing a business plan, it's right here, writing a business plan. Okay. How to write a business plan. And your essential elements are right there. Okay. And it goes, let me get rid of this window. Okay, so there's some key things you want to make sure are in your business plan. What I'm looking for, you may just want to jot this down. I want to make sure that you have a decent business plan executive summary. I want to understand your market analysis, okay? So several of you in here talk about things you want to do. Catering, wine, online marketing. So this is a key thing right here, okay? This is a key thing. And this article that just came out in the May 14th edition of Time Magazine actually talks about the emerging markets, okay? Talks about fast-growing fields, all right? And where people are going to be learning and where people are going to be growing, all right? So again, do some research. So you want to do wine, okay? Let's do some research, okay? But let's make sure we checked our market analysis. Does it make sense? Okay. Kumon, education. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. Why does that particular education make sense? Because what's happening in our society right now with education? Okay. What's happening right now in our society with education? Where are we going back to? We're going back to vocational education again. Right? Why? Because we need skilled labor because of our recession. We now need to retool our labor force. So vocational education is making a big comeback. Okay? Yeah. Another link to Kumon type programs, right? So the market analysis, I want to see that. I want to understand that. I want to make sure you're evaluating it properly. Okay? Company description, I'm not worried about that. That needs to be there. I want to understand your organization, your management. Okay? Every business is different. And how are you putting your business together to be successful against ABC business, which is right down the street or the next city? How many wine distributors do we already have? Okay. What is different about what we're going to do to make me a successful company? So I'm not part of that 70%. Right? Again, who are you going to serve? What's the market availability? This one down here is always very interesting. Where are we going to get our startup funds? Okay. How are we going to finance this? What's available to us? How many watched Shark Tank? Okay. How many watched it last night? Okay. I mean, I think that's an interesting program, particularly for a class like this, to listen to what these people are thinking. All right. I think it's an amazing program from an entrepreneurship part of it, because it's taking common everyday people that have a goal, a dream, a desire, and trying to make it go. Okay? Now, it also shows you the spectrum of how people can or cannot be successful. But I think from a entrepreneur, seeing people as thinking is great shape. So, funding. All right? Startup. Operational cash. Reserve cash. Stock. Okay? All those things play a part. The type of business that you choose dictate all of those things. Inventory. Financial projections have to be a minimum of 5 years, normally 10 years. Okay, especially if you're trying to get an SBA loan. Right? But what I'm looking for here is I don't want you to spend hours trying to put sales to that. What I want to understand is you have an understanding of it. So show me a few years, okay, that you understand how to talk about startup expenses, how we're going to operate, what we're going to put aside for reserve, how we're going to pay down our loan, okay? What are our contingency plans? That's what I want to understand there, okay? Appendix, I'm not really worried about for your presentation. Okay, the key things I'm focused on are the meat, if you will, of the business plan. What do you want to do? How do you plan on doing it? How does the market analysis support what you're trying to do? How am I going to run it? And how am I going to fund it? Those are the challenges. And quite frankly, from what you present to the class, it will probably give us also an insight to your commitment. Okay? Are you ready to mortgage your house? Are you ready to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? Are you ready to live in the back of your store? So think about all these things as we put it together. So for the business plan, use the SBA website. Now, there's another entity attached to the SBA. It's called SCORE. And I will tell you that I wish I would have learned about SCORE much earlier in my second business cycle. Okay? All right? Because although I did reach out to this group and started making a relationship with a mentor, it was already too late for me. Okay? I'd already passed that threshold. But anybody that's going to go into business, this is free. Okay? These are very successful people that volunteer to help others. Okay? And there's a link on here, again, on the SBA website to take you to SCORE. But if you just look at the vast information that's available on the SBA website and all the linkages, it's just amazing. Okay? Look at all these things that they help you do. From start to finish, they will guide you. Okay? And when you click on some of these links, they take you to so many other links. So the knowledge is out there. Okay? You search business development or business plans on Google, you get lists and lists and lists. Okay? Some are paid, some are free. So use this resource for your business plan. Okay? You'll do a very good job. You'll learn a lot. It's a great reference tool for you to use. Okay? On the right side there, you see where it says finding a mentor and stuff like that. This goes into the SCORE program. Okay? There is money out there. There are people out there, as we can see on the Shark Tank, willing to give money if the concept is correct. Okay? There are loans available out there through the SBA, program. Okay? Especially for different sectors of the society. So use this website to help you. Okay? Any questions about this? And again, one of the things I want to go back to is marketing. I want to know your ideas. Okay? I'll make sure I understand how you want to market this business. Okay? What do you think is going to work best? And you're going to figure that out by researching. Okay? Researching. We already have, all right. Okay, so let's see here. Any questions about what is due for your midterm? Any questions about the syllabus? All right. So tonight, when you go home, you'll start working on your business plan. That means you'll be doing a lot of research on the SBA website, starting to get your outlines and stuff. You'll be diving into your reading, which actually, quite frankly, isn't that bad. Quite frankly, the book is not as challenging as some that I've seen. It's not like a real book. Okay, so that's a positive thing. And then you start working on your discussion questions and what you want to do. So every week when you come to class, please bring with you an article to talk about. Okay, take about 5 to 7 minutes per person to talk about something to do with business. Okay, somebody's failure, somebody's success, something to do with entrepreneurship. It doesn't have to be directly related, but it needs to have a nexus. Okay, how does that help us understand a concept? Right? Come on. No, it can be any article you want. Online, magazine, newspaper, whatever you want. Okay? Again, what is out there that helps you grow and understand? Okay? I just want you to bring something to the table every week. All right? Something to the table every week to talk about. So then again, what am I doing by this? What am I having you do by doing this? Research. Knowledge base. Okay? Sharing information. That's what I want you to do. All right? So let's and again, this is not a written, just bring it in, we'll talk about it, we'll move on, get into our lecture, our material. Okay? So chapter 1 really is our introduction to entrepreneurship. Okay? What entrepreneurship is all about. And so what is an entrepreneur? What is an entrepreneur? A person operates their own business. Tony? Okay. How about the way they think? How does an entrepreneur think? Okay. Okay. So business opportunities, starting a new business. What else? Of course, we're always looking to make money. But do some of us have a goal to serve the some of us really have that niche in us that we want to do something that's just, like find a vaccine or put this product out there that really changes our life. Okay, so the thinking of an entrepreneur is much different than a lot of people. The way they look at things, the way they dissect things, the way they analyze things is different. They're very methodical. They take their time. They try and analyze each step. So it's a different way of thinking. Okay. The book interpretation is an individual who takes initiative. Initiative. Okay. Again, a thinker. Chances. Willing to bear the risk. How many of us fail? 70%. Okay. In the first 5 years. First 5 years. It's a challenge. Okay? It's a challenge. As I said to you, we started an entrepreneur 20 years ago is much different than today. Because today things move so quickly. Social media, internet, the ability to sell things and to grow ideas, and quite frankly, to manipulate and fraud is so prevalent. How many infomercials do you see? How many emails do you get about products? The majority of those are worthless. They're worthless. But people are doing it every day. Every day someone's launching hundreds of websites trying to sell a product. And unfortunately, too many people buy that stuff. They don't research. They don't validate. Even things that are on the shelf at the store, how many times do we hear recalls? Because it didn't live up to its expectation. Okay. So there's also a sense of responsibility that comes with being a true entrepreneur. Okay. There's also a sense of responsibility. Ethics in everything we do. In our workplace, in our job, in our business. There has to be a standard of ethics. Otherwise, your successfulness will be challenged. Okay? So, the creation process, again, how do we think? We're thinkers. All right? Just listening to you folks this morning talk about your wine, you're passionate. Okay? You've got ideas. So let's put them together. Okay? Catering, let's put them together. Kumon, how do we open a second store? Okay? How do we get your online business going? Devotion, time, effort, commitment, so important. Okay? Now, if you're Mr. Facebook, you're worth billions. Okay? If you're HP Computer, you're worth millions. But not everybody does that. How many of those do you really hear? Okay? Very few. Again, our behavior, our judgment, uncertainty about the possibility, opportunity. Okay, that's why your research is so important. How many of these folks already exist? Am I going to have an impact? Is the market saturated? Very important for you to consider before you go down that line. This is why building the plan is so important. Because if you do those steps, the research, the analysis, the need, you will prevent yourself from getting yourself into a position where you don't want to be. Aspects of entrepreneurship, again, these are how you go about developing your plan. How do you go about developing your enterprise? Okay. So with your SBA website, with this table, you can sit down and make a good outline about how you want to go forward developing your business plan. How do you make your business model? How do we make sure this is what we want to develop? Window of opportunity. In our market analysis, do some products have a short time frame? Absolutely. Okay. Maybe this is a niche market. Okay. Let's take the pet rock. Remember that? The pet rock, 15 years ago or so, always buying those pet rocks in a box for $19.95. Okay. Talk about a window of opportunity. How long did that phase really last? Think about some of the other things like the Cabbage Patch dolls. Okay. How long did that phase really last? So there is a window of opportunity for some products. Okay. Soap is soap. We'll always need soap, but does soap evolve? Sure it does. But in general, that's a long-term product. Okay? So something to consider. In your business plan, you may need to address the changing dynamics that you anticipate, that you forecast. Okay? So our opportunity for product A today may evolve to something in 3 to 5 years. Okay? So something else to think about. Again, the way we think as entrepreneurs, we have to think differently. We are willing to take more chances. Many people are not. Many people that are not good entrepreneurs, that have to have that $1,000 sale every day. Okay? They have to make $1,000 every day. That's not business. We have to understand how our business is going to ebb and flow. That's how we think differently. And that's the important part about it. We talked about the MBA program. It teaches us to think differently. Okay? It teaches us to challenge what we're told, evaluate what we're told, research what we're told. We don't take anything on face value. We listen, we take it in, we evaluate, we dissect. That's what we do. And that's what we're doing as entrepreneurs. Okay? How many people do you think you want to reach out to talk about your wine product as you start developing that business plan and model?
I like to, talk to a lot of different people, but I know that in my area in LA, particularly in the African American community, there's a lot of drink wine, but they don't. They need me to come and show them how to do it, how to, I used to sell wine for this company called Wine Shop at Home, and so I would go into the home and I would have this wine party, and I show people how to. It's really fun, and then I describe to them the type of food that goes with the wine, and then I would have the hostess make like little plates with chocolate and strawberry, grapes, and crackers. So, and it was a lot of fun, and the people would just buy these cases and cases of wine, and so, but it's just something that a lot of African American people, as far as I know, I don't know much about a lot of the other races, so I haven't never done that kind of research, but I know in my area, there's a lot of African Americans that drink wine, that go to, concerts and take wine, and this is a big market for it, but it's kind of untapped. So that's what I'm kind of interested in developing this little business where I could really like bring a lot of people into. They can get into my little wine club and get bottles of wine delivered to their house every month and that kind of thing.
Let's turn to page 6 of your text, please. The bottom of page 6, it sort of talks about these four basic aspects. I want to make sure that everybody understands them so that it's clear as you develop your plan where we're thinking. So we talk about the creative process, right? So she has a creative process. Tila has a creative process. Everybody has that creative process. They have that thought. The devotion. Do you hear devotion in her voice? Okay. Okay. Tila was talked about her mom's catering, how she believes she could help that. We talked about the different online businesses, the tax businesses, the things you've been doing. There's a devotion there. Okay? The rewards of being an entrepreneur. You want to help your mother. Okay? You want to help others with your want, educate. So there is a reward. Okay? We talked about being our own boss, our independence. Okay? Another important part of this, because many of us don't like to be told. All right? And for someone who's been in government for years, it's always do as they say. And a lot of people don't follow that, and that's really what drives a lot of entrepreneurs. So I think that it's important to understand the development of the entrepreneur so that you understand clearly what it's going to take and why we think differently, because that's the key. When you start doing your research, analyze it, think about it. What's it mean to you? How does that concept or that information help you, or does it not? Use it, you discount it. Really identifying what you want to do is challenging. It's difficult. It's going to take you time. Now, again, I know we're not going to have weeks to do this. You've got 2 weeks to build your business plan. Okay? So I'm not expecting you, as I said, to put depth into it. But I want to make sure you have done some research, done some analysis, give me some pros and cons as to why or why not this may or may not work. Page 13, we talk about adaptability, okay? Why am I spending so much time on this? Why is this important to me? Why should it be important to you? Because we have to be different. We have to be willing to open our minds and think differently. We have to be able to do multiple things. We have to be self-policing. Okay? We have to be willing to say, I can't do this any longer. That's one of the things I like about the Shark Tank. Right? They tell the folks coming up there, are you crazy? You've mortgaged your house. You've done this, you've done that. You can't, this won't work. Okay? Because those folks that were in trying to be entrepreneurs weren't self-regulated. They didn't control their urge. They didn't do their research. They didn't think things out. They didn't seek input. Okay? Resources. Another key part of the cycle. On page 14 and 15, there's an article in here about entrepreneurs and paranoia. Do you think we have a right to be paranoid? Entrepreneurs? Why?
No chance of failing.
Okay. A big chance of failure. All right. And why else are we paranoid?
Competition.
Competition. No one's really mentioned here this morning, but what are we trying to do by being an entrepreneur? Are we trying to develop our self-worth? Are we trying to make sure we can provide and have a decent lifestyle? So there's a living standard here too. Okay? So do we all have paranoia when it comes to our well-being? Absolutely. Okay? Absolutely. So this was an interesting reading here, so please make sure you take some time to read it, because if you look at the end of it when it talks about advice to the entrepreneur, it gives you some things to think about and reflect upon. And, again, quite frankly, things like this is what I like you to be posting, because these are very powerful type things that will elicit different responses from everybody in this room. Because we're all going to have a different view, a different platform, a different experience to answer the question. How many times have you not been able to accomplish something in your life something from that event? Okay. Absolutely. So failure is actually another learning tool. Did I learn from my first business failure? Absolutely. Did I implement things differently in the second one and the third one? Absolutely. I've also done that in the jobs I've had. I left a particular job and it was running like clockwork, and within 6 months after I left, it was floundering. And I was very close to the person I worked for, my boss at the time. Matter of fact, she's a client of mine today. And I said to myself, what did I do wrong? And the analysis was, I didn't do enough depth. I kept everything here, my level. I didn't empower people. Okay? So we need to learn from our failures, and we do learn. But the important part of that is, how do we evaluate that failure? How do we take that failure and really learn from it? How do we get all the minutia out of the way and focus on what went right and what went wrong and what we could have done differently? Because think about this. Think about your kids. You deal with this every day. Okay? When they do something wrong, it's everybody else's fault. Everything else has something to do with it. And what I do is I stand there and I push all that stuff away and I say, okay, if you would have done X, would this have happened? And when you look at it in that standpoint, that helps you evaluate. Okay? It helps you make a true evaluation of what you could have done better. And so failure is not a bad thing. So on your Kumon business, not that it's not failure, but maybe from a marketing perspective, from an operational perspective, from a planning perspective, we could have done things differently. Okay? So evaluating that. Why is it taking me so long? Now, 3 to 5 years is an average incubation period for any business. Okay, this is. But what could we have done differently? What things triggered our lack of success? What things triggered our inability to meet our business? When a business fails, what happened? Why? Because the thing about entrepreneurs, think about it. Take Donald Trump. How many times he filed bankruptcy? Many. Okay? But he's still there. He's still got a big jet. He's still got Taj Mahals. Right? Why? Well, first of all, he's using other people's money. Okay? But second of all, he took something out of each one of those failures. Okay? He learned a lesson. People go bankrupt today and start anew tomorrow. Right? I know people myself that run businesses, filed bankruptcy on Friday, been in business again on Monday. And they took those things, they said, this is where I failed, this is how I'm going to do it differently. And I know 2 guys right now that have been very successful their 3rd time around. Took them 3 times to get it right. A lot of it had to do with their inability to listen, to take input, their stubbornness. They weren't creatively thinking. They weren't thinkers. They were trying to implement, but not evaluate, not learn. So it's a very important concept. When we fail, do our emotions get involved? Do we like this beat ourselves up? So we have to manage that emotion, that negative emotion also. Okay? We just have to, because it's going to happen. And again, a lot of these things we're talking about, it's not just talking about the business world. There's a nexus to our life. Okay? And some people, that get depressed and get different personalities. They're not able to dissect this and evaluate what's being given to them, what happened. I talked about ethics and social responsibilities. There is a certain amount of ethics and social responsibility going to everything we do. If we're in business, we're providing some sort of product or service to another, all right? There is a moral responsibility here to be a good person, to be a good business person, to be a good neighbor. And a lot of times we forget that, and people do it out of greed, as we talked about a few minutes ago. Okay? So this is something you have to understand and really evaluate so that you don't become a failure due to yourself. Okay? Think about it. I love using these. Who watches Chef Ramsay? Where he's out doing the restaurants and he evaluates restaurants and he goes in there. These people have been in business all these years, not making any money, in debt up through their ears, have sold everything, living in their restaurant. Okay? And a lot of it comes down to social responsibility, commitment, their lack of commitment. Right? There's things to be learned from these types of programs. I mean, I know we look at it from the standpoint of it's enjoyment, it's funny, but for an entrepreneur, there's things to be gleaned from these programs. Watching a couple episodes of Shark Tank, watching shows like Ramsay and his kitchen nightmares, there are things to be gleaned from those shows because it will give you an insight as to, wow, what was that person thinking? What were they not thinking? How many of us, we all work, okay? What does all of our companies have? We sign when we get hired. Code of conduct. You need to have a self-imposed code of conduct as an entrepreneur. You need to self-impose a code of conduct for yourself. So you can truly be socially responsible and able to support, defend your product, your service. That's a very important concept, and it's talked about in several pages in the text because it's important. Okay? It's truly important that we understand that we do have a responsibility as we move forward with our product development and our service line. We've been hearing a lot about this lately. Who's driving our economy and who has always driven our economy? We hear about it every day in the news. What is our economy? What's the biggest part of our economy? Small business entrepreneurs. Small business entrepreneurs. How many small business entrepreneurs are there? Who's driving the recovery of our economy right now? It's not GE, not Microsoft. It's the small business entrepreneurs. That's why the SBA exists. Help small business entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurship has a very important role in our economic development. We have to have that as part of our economic engine. And although there's a lot of turnover, there's a lot of failure, there's also a lot of startup. And most entrepreneur organizations or entrepreneur people, we're not millionaires. We're not millionaires. There's very few Facebook kids out there. Right? Most of us are just average Joes that have a business, we make some money, we have a decent living, we take care of our families. So, quite frankly, when I left the sheriff's department, I was like, I need to go make money. I'm just going to go make money. I need to make more money. I need to make money. And my mindset wasn't in the right place. I assumed, since I've been in business since I was a little tight, that it'd be easy. And I did my business plan, I did those things, but I forgot a very important element of that business plan. Talking to others, reaching out, asking for help. quite frankly, my commitment wasn't 100%. My attention was diverted. I was an absentee owner. Those things you have to think about. Let's talk about Facebook for a few minutes. As a result of that IPO, what has happened? What has happened to other companies like Facebook? There's an article in the paper this week. Well, there's other companies out in Silicon Valley that were contemplating doing IPOs. What have they decided to do? Stop. Okay? They're not going to move forward at this time. If you think back here about Facebook and its IPO, let's go back a couple months now. What did you hear almost every day? What were some of the flags you kept hearing? Prior to them going public, okay, the last 30 days leading up to the issuance of the IPO, what were you hearing on the news? Stocks overpriced. What are they going to do? How is he going to grow the business? The model isn't right. Okay? All these things were coming out in the newspaper about, geez, maybe this thing might be a good thing. Okay? There was all these, what you call indicators, economic indicators were coming out. 2 weeks after the launch, where are they at?
Yeah, they made some money yesterday.
Correct. Finally, they're 22% under their launch value. Now, there's a whole bunch of other things going on with that, but from an entrepreneur standpoint, okay, think about that from an entrepreneur standpoint. If you were going to put $100,000 into Facebook, how much money did you just lose? You just lost 20% of your investment. Because a lot of people didn't ignore the indicators. Okay? They ignored those things that were being talked about, being said. So, now the other entrepreneurs that were going to follow Facebook are going, whoa, let's slow down here. Let's reevaluate this. This didn't work the way it was supposed to. Okay? That's a good thing. Could it be harmful to that company? I can't remember which company it was. It was just on the news this week. Could it be harmful to that company to not continue on that IPO route? Sure it could. But it could also be harmful to them if they do it too quickly based upon what we're looking at. Adaptability. Talk about that. Okay? Adapting to our changing conditions is a key part of being a solid entrepreneur. Be willing to take the risk not to do it. Because maybe the timing's not right in light of what happened until Facebook stabilizes.
What's the point anyway? What's the point of him going public? I mean, why? He was fine how his business was. I kind of don't get it. Get that part. Why did he do this? I mean, is it going to make him more and more money? Or, why is he giving the public part the opportunity? I guess he wants to be is he being like a person who's giving charity? What do you call him? Like the philanthropist or something?
That's not him.
No, that's not his personality.
How much money was he being paid annually on his salary?
Probably not.
What? He was getting like $1 million. Okay. His COO, I think, was getting like $8 million. How many stocks have you owned? Now, he made his money by going public. He made his billions by taking the company public. Okay? Now, is there another business reason? Yes. According to their filings and all that stuff, their whole idea of now going to the next level with Facebook and different platforms and changing the way traversing social media again, all that was part of it, absolutely. But think about the millions, the billions he got. Okay, the billions. So, from an entrepreneur standpoint, I guess if you start dissecting all the things we've talked about this morning, from the issue of ethics, the issue of the economic cycle, I mean, we could probably take and make a pie chart up here of all the positives he did by doing that, and all the not so positive things he did by doing that. Okay? We could dialogue this for days. But from a business model standpoint, okay, there are many people out there now challenging this business model. Okay? There are people out there challenging the business model prior to. What's one of the big controversies that's recently come up after the IPO? Was it Goldman Sachs that was giving their special investors don't buy? Okay? So there's a whole other element coming out of this now. Well, why would a major company, I believe it was Goldman Sachs, was a major brokerage company, telling their key investors don't buy? Why? Why was it? They saw something. They didn't like something. Okay? So, and again, if you were to dissect this thing and look about all the things about being an entrepreneur, there's a lot to talk about here. Okay? So there's a lot of things that happen, and maybe things that haven't happened, or maybe things that shouldn't happen. There are a lot of people out there that think that as you just said, what was the necessity of the IPO? What was really his Zuckerberg's goal behind the IPO? Okay? Was it money? Or was it truly to help the economic development of his business, to move that business to the next step? What is one of the most prevalent things that people have been saying about Zuckerberg himself? They're challenging his ability to lead that company. Okay? They're challenging his ability to lead that company. Does this kid have the skill set to take Facebook to the next level? Many people think no. Many people think that he'll be gone in a very short period of time.
Could they fire him now that he's public?
No. Well, no, because he owns too much of the company. He retained
51% of it.
the thing that's bothering people. He still owns enough shares nobody can tell him what to do. He doesn't have to listen to anybody. So
this if you are fired,
he can't be fired.
you fired as of the CEO.
He could. He could. Okay, he could, but no one's got enough strength to do that, because he's still holding all the cards.
Didn't they have a vote? I mean,
Well, the vote's great, but he still has more votes than anybody else.
more shares.
Okay, and what's the reality of getting? Let's talk about this for a second. How many CEOs have gotten fired in the last couple of years? Not very many. We had one resign recently because he lied on his resume about his legal education or something. Okay, you know, Yahoo. Okay, but other than that was him. Other than that omission on his resume, okay, how many have gotten fired? You know, I get my stock. How many of you have stocks? Okay, you get the thing in the mail about the annual vote. I throw that in the mail. I throw it in the trash shredder. It's worthless. What is my vote going to have to do with the compensation package for that CEO? Zero. Okay. It's predetermined. It's already in place. But from an entrepreneur standpoint, Facebook's a good model to look at. Because a lot of dynamics are in place there. Okay? A lot of dynamics are in place there. And a lot of things are happening. Take that model against Forbes. Steve Jobs. They're night and day. The whole philosophy of the company is night and day. Now, are they serving two different sectors of our economic development? Absolutely. But they're night and day. Night and day. So again, something to look at. And as you look for articles, these are things you look for. Okay? Things like that will spur some thought in your mind, or give you something to think about, something to evaluate. All right, let's take about a 10-minute break here. I need a glass of water.